technical session. I'm Muskan Data, the conference coordinator and your co-host of the day. Before we begin, I would like to talk to you about our chairperson for technical session first, who is a pioneer in his field, Dr. Rajiv Ranjan. Now, Dr. Rajiv Ranjan is currently working as an assistant professor of chemistry in Dr. Shyam Prasad Mukherjee University, Ranchi, Jharkhand. He has a rich teaching experience of 12 years and 6 years research experience as a UGC JRF and SRF, and another 9 years research experience as a principal investigator on UGC funded projects. He has a lifetime membership of the Indian Science Congress Association, Kolkata, Association of Environmental Analytical Chemistry of India, BARC, Association of Chemistry Teachers, HBCSE-TIFR, Indian Aerosol Science and Technology Biophysical Society, TIFR Mumbai, National Magnetic Resonance Society, IISc Bangalore, and patron member of Jharkhand Chemical Society, Ranchi. Dr. Ranjan has 22 national and international publications at his credit and has participated in over 38 courses, workshops in India and abroad. I would kindly ask to please mute your mic. Dr. Varsha Chaudhary, kindly mute your mic please. Dr. Varsha Chaudhary, kindly mute yourself.
Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So Dr. Ranjan has 22 national and international publications at his credit and has participated in over 38 courses and workshops in India and abroad. He is an amazing teacher and a true inspiration for his students. Now, before we commence, I would like to remind all our participants that they must join the conference 5 minutes before the designated time and ensure proper internet connectivity while they speak. We request that during presentation, all other delegates must keep their mics off. Each delegate will be given 7 minutes to give their presentation, and at 5 minutes, a bell will ring to indicate the time. All participants who have prepared PPT presentations must be prepared beforehand. We would call the name of the presenter twice for their turn. If we don't get a response or the person is unavailable, we will move on to the next presenter. So kindly be ready. If that person joins or wishes to present, they can inform our team through text on the provided numbers and we will make the necessary arrangements. Now, a little motivation for our delegates. We are going to present an award for best paper presentation and another one for best innovation. The three criteria on which the presentations will be graded are first, way of presentation, second, content, and third, innovation. That is, how innovative is the paper or the idea. Well, it's finally time to end the wait for our delegates and mark the beginning of our session. First, we would now like to invite our first delegate, Shabdika from Delhi University, who will give a presentation on the Garden of Eden, the Forbidden Fruit, and the Fall of Man, a critical analysis of the Stanford Prison Experiment. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Muskan, for inviting me. I will be presenting my screen now. Is it visible to everyone? Good afternoon to our esteemed keynote speakers, respectable chairpersons, and all our acclaimed delegates. Today, I, Shabdika Datta, will be presenting my paper titled The Garden of Eden, The Forbidden Fruit and the Fall of Man, a critical analysis of the Stanford Prison Study. Evil that rises out of ordinary thinking and is committed by ordinary people is the norm, not the exception. In the August of 1971, at Stanford University, an experiment took place under a team of researchers. The experiment was to understand the development of norms and the effect of roles, labels, and social expectations in a stimulated prison environment. This social psychological study was designed in a way that the participants were to be randomly assigned the roles of guard and prisoner, and then their behavior and actions were to be observed over a period of 2 weeks. Now, for the investigation, the experimenters posted an ad in the newspaper which stated that male college students were needed for a psychological study of prison life and $15 per day would be given to them as a reward. Now, this was incentive enough for the students who were on their break in summer. One noticeable detail that we can find from this is that the fact that the experimenters decided to make the pool of the participants of college male students. This, in all sense, can be attributed to the zeitgeist of that time. The campus confrontations in Ohio, Mississippi, and Kent states were enough reason for the experimenters to assume that college students were protesting against the government and the police, the otherwise protectors. And why was this happening? Zimbardo, who was very much keen in understanding the anonymity and the communal good and evil, led all of these to his reasoning and went ahead with his experimenting. The episode, The Guards and the Prisoners. A day before the actual experiment started, the participants who were supposed to role play as guards were given the uniform and tools as part of their attire. They were also issued mirrored glasses to prevent eye contact between guards and prisoners. It provided a sense of anonymity and distance. Now think, for example, whenever a prisoner would look up at a guard, they would see their imprisoned state staring right back at them. During that day, they also formulated certain rules with the warden, which were to be followed during the 2-week-long experiment. As for the participants who were assigned the role of prisoners, they were arrested from their homes by actual police, and then they were handed over to the experimenters in the mock prison. The uniform for the prisoners consisted of a smock made of tan muslin cloth with identification number written on the front and the back. A woman's nylon stocking served as a ball cap, as cutting of hair and head shaving is a common initiation practice in most of the prison systems and military camps. It was also done in favor of increasing the factor of anonymity, as covering of one's head is seen as a decrease of individuality. They were also asked to put rubber clog and a locked chain around one of their ankles in an attempt to remind them of their imprisoned state every conscious and unconscious moment of their stay in the Stanford County Prison. The prisoners were actually carried to the mock prison one by one, where they went through what Zimbardo wrote as the Sunday's degradation ritual. The prisoners were blindfolded, lined up against the wall, much like shown in the figure 5. The only exception was the fact that they were stripped naked and were left standing in the pose for a long period of time, while the guards mocked them about their penis size and made humiliating comments about their genitals. This action was penned by Zimbardo as an act of boys being boys. Well, one won't disagree with this idea completely. But the interesting thing to note is that such casual embarrassment or actions of shaming someone are often then not neglected when we talk about the stress and how our sexual self-concept is disturbed by such degradation. Unfortunately, that was not all. The guard became an oppressive figure in the mock prison. As Zimbardo said in one of his interviews, the guard projected such act in order to show who's boss. They started to control the food rations, restrict prisoners' bathroom use. One video clip also shows a guard using a folded chair to push back a shouting prisoner back in his cell. The prisoner, on the other hand, sounds frustrated and uses curse words for the experiment and Zimbardo as well. Another video clip also shows a prisoner desperately shouting to get out of the prison. Such verbal and mental abuse of participants or within participants should be strictly monitored by the experimenters. But as we can observe, no precautions were taken to deal with the situation. The role of Zimbardo and the ethical issue. The extent of creative evil in which many of the guards engaged, and the extent of the suffering of many of the prisoners, and the extent of my passivity in allowing the abuse to continue for as long as I did, this is an action of evil. According to the 2016 issued booklet of Ethical Principles of Psychologists and the Code of Conduct published by the American Psychiatric Association, SPE violates most of the clauses in Section 3, that is, human relations. From clause 3.01, unfair discrimination, to 3.04, avoiding harm. Even though some of the ethics violated have been updated in the ethic code throughout the years, it won't be wrong to say that most of the things written as ethics mostly talk about basic human conduct. In the experiment, Zimbardo and his colleagues tried to replicate an actual prison. Their ambition to understand the difference between what people bring to a prison and what prison does to them led to a cloudy judgment when it came to the execution of the actual study. The results that were published by the team stated that when people feel anonymous, they readily get into their role and the influence of the environment that ultimately led to the behavior during the study. So, in other words, what they're trying to say is that the cruel behavior of the guards was due to the fact that they were influenced by the prison environment and because of the so called wellspring of evil, which is innate in all of us, fountained over the poor participants playing the prisoners. In all opinion, to simply conclude these results was a simplistic decision on part of Zimbardo and his team, as they only saw what they wanted to see. The results supported the well-recognized hypotheses in their mind because they created such situations to prove it. It is a known fact that in the orientation for the guards, which was done a day before the experiment, they recalled being asked to be oppressive to the prisoners. In some sense, it gave them the idea of what was being studied, and thus their behavior reflected the same. They projected a common phenomena known as demand characteristic. One video clip also shows the experimenters asking the participants role playing as guards to be what is called a tough guard. Such suggestive talk will definitely lead to the desired outcomes. The comments and actions of experimenters became the working guidelines of the guards' cruel behavior. Now there was one guard which specifically stated that they could hear the experimenters talking behind the screen. Now just think, whenever a guard would show such cruel behavior and would time figure get that at the end of the day it is an experiment and the students playing prisoners are just students, not prisoners. The plight and the mental torture the prisoners went through was realized, and that was also the reason why the experiment was aborted within 1 week. The stress which was building within them led to actual meltdowns for some of the participants playing prisoners. The freedom of cruelty given to the guards was also one of the many reasons why the situation got out of control. Whenever we go through an experiment, we try and keep a check on all the variables which can come into play while the experiment is in process. We control the situation to the degree where we can study the variable we intend to. But here, the relationship between the guards and the prisoners went so out of control, and there was no way to regulate it. It went from being an experiment to a simple observation of the horrible treatment of the guards against the prisoners. The design of the study somewhere failed the experiment. And then there was also the fact that the experimenters did not act as responsible as they should have. It is horrifying to think that only within 3 to 4 days, the mock prison became a suffocating environment where rebellions were taking place. The sheer extent of evil and stress created within this short time span leads one to think, where does this power complex and the will to suppress the weak comes from? Now, when we act cruel towards someone, there has to be some motive behind it. It could be simple hatred against the person, or jealousy, or envy, but something is common between all these emotions, and that is aggression or anger. But the biological perspective of anger also states that the biological perspective of aggression also states that anger is an instinct in humans. But this behavior goes beyond just rage. It is pure evil against the one who is feeble in the situation. There are total 168 hours in a week, and within that time, the world of social psychology recorded the long-known cruel fact of the dark side of humankind. Is evil committed by humans? Or are humans bent to an intangible environmental will to commit evil? Are we civil just in name? In conclusion, Just like in the book of Genesis, the evil serpent tempted Eve to eat the fruit of knowledge. She, under the influence, picked the fruit and ate it. Nonetheless, it was also her hand that caused the fall of man. Evil leads to the sowing of seeds of doubt, which, with other stressful situations, grows into a sapling and gives birth to the tree of shame. This tree later bears the fruit of aggression, which time and again doesn't need any temptation to be harvested. It were, as my paper was about a critical analysis, it would be right to conclude with the words of Carl Jung. Knowing your darkness is the best method of dealing with the darkness of other people. Similarly, the above analysis is a way to undertain the critical viewpoint of the studies done in the past and use this knowledge to move forward with a fresh and renewed perspective, supported by the corrections of the flaws in the past. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much, Shabdika. That was a truly mesmerizing presentation depicting the workings of human behavior when left to their own devices. Now, I would like to inform everyone that our chairperson for the session, Dr. Rajiv Ranjan, has joined us, and I would like to speak a few words about him again. Dr. Rajiv Ranjan is a pioneer in his field. He is currently working as an assistant professor of chemistry in Dr. Shyam Prasad Mukherjee University, Ranchi, Jharkhand. He has a rich teaching experience of 12 years and 6 years research experience as a UGC, JRF and SRF, and another 9 years research experience as a principal investigator on UGC funded projects. He has a lifetime membership of the Indian Science Congress Association, Kolkata, Association of Environmental Analytical Chemistry of India, BARC, Association of Chemistry Teachers, HBCSE, TIFR, Indian Aerosol Science and Technology Association, BARC, Mumbai, Society for Materials Chemistry, BARC, Mumbai, Biophysical Society, TIFR, Mumbai, National Magnetic Resonance Society, IISc, Bangalore, and patron member of Jharkhand Chemical Society, Ranchi. Dr. Ranjan has 22 national and international publications at his credit and has participated in over 38 courses and workshops in India and abroad. He is an amazing teacher and a true inspiration for his students. Sir, kindly speak a few words and then we'll continue with our session.
Thank you, madam. Am I audible to all?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, I convey my sincere thanks to the Principal Raj Rishi College, Dr. Hukum Singh, Conference Organizing Secretary, Dr. Mamta Sharma, and Organizing Coordinator, Dr. Muskan Datta, for giving me opportunity for chairing the first technical session of this international conference. This 4-day-long conference is going to be one of the biggest conference in the nation in the terms of participation and research paper publication. I must congratulate to the Principal Rajarishi College and the organizing committee for organizing such a huge conference which continues for 4 days. And many keynote speakers has already told about the theme of the conference, and there is not much left for me, but I would like to add one thing only, that environmental sustainability is a very important topic, and definitely this has capacity to affect the every aspects of the globe. And so I wish that this conference will be very successful. And again, I request you to please continue and proceed. Allow the next participants to present their paper. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Okay, sir, let's move on. I would now like to invite our second delegate of the day, Ms. Agampuri Sandhuni Anupam Zoyza from Jain University, Bangalore, who will give a presentation on preparation of bioplastics by using carrageenan and banana peels. The stage is yours.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me share the screen.
Okay.
Good afternoon, dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So, today I'm going to do my presentation regarding the topic preparation of bioplastics by using carrageenan and banana peels. We were guided by Dr. G. Subbulakshmi, Dr. Padmapriya Gopalakrishnan. And this was done by Agampudi Sandhuni Anupama D'Souza, Jagodige Heshani Tarutini, Mrudula P. S. Neha Izagapke, Daniel Omekoche of Faculty of Life Sciences, Jain University, Bangalore. So, as we all know, non-degradable plastics is one of the major environmental threats. Due to this non-degradability, they act as one of the major pollutants in the world. As a solution for plastics, we can use biodegradable and as well as edible plastics. So in this, we have made bioplastics with the help of banana peels as well as red seaweed carrageenan. So these are the items that we have used in making our bioplastics. Glycerin is used as the main plasticizer, and it will increase the tensile strength. These bioplastics can be used to produce edible lunch sheets, spoons, plates, etc. Moreover, aloe vera, turmeric powder, natural colors too can be added for this. Aloe vera helps to retain the moisture, and turmeric they helps to for the antimicrobial as an antimicrobial agent. With the help of thin bioplastics, we can make small water balls that can be consumed. So these can be used in occasions like marathon events to give water for the athletes. So these bioplastics can act as a promising solution for the problem caused by plastics, synthetic plastics. So burning of synthetic plastics lead to the release of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, etc. Another major reason for environmental pollution is plastics are non-degradable. As these plastics are used for the packaging purposes, disposal rate too is very high. So by replacing the biodegradable plastics instead of synthetic plastics, a lot of environmental problems can be solved. These bioplastics are edible too. In edible packaging, we are able to consume this packaging. So here we are mainly focusing on the preparation of edible plastics by using carrageenan and banana peels. So the main components used in making bioplastics are biopolymers. So we have used polysaccharides, proteins, lipids, as well as the main biopolymers. Composite, plasticizers and additives too are added along with these biopolymers. In polysaccharides, we can use either plants or animal polysaccharides. They have the excellent gas permeability, and cellulose, starch, chitosan, pectin are the examples for these polysaccharides that we can use here. And when you talk about the proteins, both animal and plant proteins are used, and the examples are gelatin, casein, glutenin, and then lipids. They have a good water vapor barrier property, and the examples are waxes mainly. Plasticizers, they enhance the flexibility and resilience. Examples are glycerol, sorbitol, and additives. They cooperate into edible film or antimicrobial and anti-browning purposes. Examples are cinnamon, cardamom, clove, nutmeg, ginger, citric acid. And in our study, we have mainly focused on carrageenan and banana peels. When we come to banana peels, they are one of the major sources of starch, and they contain 18.5% of starch. If we dispose them in landfills, they produce toxic gases like methane and carbon dioxide. Therefore, we can use them to make edible plastics as a source of starch. So when we come to carrageenan, it's a sulfated linear polysaccharide which is extracted from red seaweeds. The primary structure of carrageenan is made up of alternating disaccharide repeating units of beta D galactose at positions of 3 and alpha D galactose at positions of 4. This is the chemical structure. So our main objective in this project is to promote environmental friendly products instead of toxic and non-biodegradable products to create a wonderful future. So let's move on to the methodology. This is the method of making bioplastics by using carrageenan. So these are the required materials. So first of all, we have to measure 200 grams of potassium hydroxide and add 2 liters of distilled water, and then dissolve it in till it becomes transparent solution, and then we have to heat it up to 60 degrees Celsius and add 100 grams of dried seaweed carrageenan and leave it for 2 hours. During that time, potassium hydroxide was reacted with carrageenan molecules, and finally 3,6-anhydrogalactose was produced. After that, seaweed was turned into green colored gel-like structure. Proteins and carbohydrates released into the solution. So we have to leave it for about 2 hours and then filter and obtain the seaweed. Seaweed structure was changed and now appear like a gel. So spread it on a surface and leave it to dry. Sanitize with chlorine water to remove any pathogens, to kill the pathogens. Blend it into smaller parts and bleach them again by using 1% of bleaching solution. It appears like snow white, and bad odor was also removed. It's free of pathogens. Wash it with water, add 50%, 50 milliliters of sodium thiosulfate solution, and add 0.5 grams of ascorbic acid into it. And the above reagents help to remove the leftovers and also remove the leftover chromides. Keep it for 2 hours and dip it in pure water for 12 hours and remove the leftover chlorine. To be on the safer side, dip a colored paper in the solution and check whether it's bleached. If it's bleached, that means it had chlorine. Therefore, dip it again in water bath for about 8 to 12 hours. Then dry the carrageenan well. Take 15 grams of carrageenan and add 7 grams of starch, 0.5%, 1 gram of glycerine to make it soft. Add 1 gram of aloe vera to retain the moisture and 1 gram of turmeric powder to kill any harmful bacteria. And we have to add 50 milliliters of water and mix it well in hot water again, and then leave it to cool. It appears as a thick solution, and spread it evenly on the flat tray and put it in the oven for 5 hours, 120 degrees Celsius. Leave it to cool in room temperature, and using few drops of water moisture this edible film and peel it off very carefully. This tries to brittle when it gets dried, therefore can't make this to wrap food materials, but we could use this as to make small plates like. To make food wrappers, 3 grams of moist carrageenan and 4 grams of starch, 2 gram of 0.5% glycerine, and 2 gram of sorbitol as a sweetener was taken and mixed well with half a liter of water. Boil in the microwave to take a smooth liquid. Pour it into a non-stick pan and keep it in the oven for 5 hours, 120 degrees Celsius. And now it's easy to remove from the non-stick pan and could use as a wrapper. These are completely edible as well as biodegradable. We can wrap food, soap, and can insert water in small amounts and can be used instead of non-degradable plastic bottles. Not only that, this will dissolve in water and can reuse this as edible plastics. If you want to reuse this, first put this into a beaker and dissolve it with hot water and 1 gram of glycerine, and microwave this to make another bioplastic by following the previous procedure. So we'll see how to make banana peels by using how to make bioplastics by using banana peels. So these are the required materials, and first we have to cut these banana peels into smaller pieces and and we have to put it into a 500 milliliter beaker and add 500 milliliters of sodium metabisulfite. Keep it for 2 minutes. Decant the sodium metabisulfite from banana peels using a funnel and add 375 milliliters of water and boil for 30 minutes. Then decant the distilled water from banana peels. After that, spread them uniformly on a parchment paper. Keep them in the oven for 30 minutes, 120 degrees Celsius, and dry the banana peels and blend to make a paste. So take again 25 grams of paste and then add 140 milliliters and add it into a 140 milliliters of beaker, and then add 3 milliliters of HCl, 2 milliliters of glycerine, and again you have to mix, and add 3 milliliters of 0.5 molar sodium hydroxide and mix. Add again 1 grams of aloe vera, 1 gram of turmeric powder, 2 milliliters of different flavors. Spread the banana paste uniformly on a parchment paper in an aluminium petri dish. Put it in the oven for 1 hour, 130 degrees Celsius. Cool it again for 1 hour and then gently peel it off. And this can be used to wrap food and to make cups, plates, etc. So let's come to the results and the discussions. Major qualities of the bioplastics that we have made are in good tensile strength, elasticity, elongation, as well as stress withholding capacity. Starch has a maximum tensile strength of up to 8.514 MPa, and amylose, amylopectin in starch react with plasticizer to form a new matrix. When the film's tensile strength increases, the concentration of the carrageenan also increases. In these rheological properties, carrageenan and starch, when mixed with glycerol, behave as a Newtonian pseudoplastic. This can be shown by using the graphical representation of shear stress and shear rate of starch. And solubilizing property of starch helps us to determine the dry weight after immersing the blend in water for 7 days. Glycerol helps to increase the water holding capacity of the films, therefore it increases the density. The resulting formulation also showed that the water resistant capacity up to 24 hours. So from the results that we have obtained, we can conclude that the edible films from banana peels and carrageenan can be used to make bioplastics. Plasticizer behaves like a non-Newtonian pseudoplastic. The bioplastics that we have obtained has different characteristics depending on the variation of the ratio between the starch and chitosan and concentration of glycerol. So therefore, this can be used as a promising solution for synthetic plastic-free earth. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your patience listening and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agapuri Sandhini Anupma Zoiza, for this wonderful presentation. It was excellent, and thank you for presenting such a creative and eco-friendly solution to help overcome plastic pollution. Let us now welcome the third delegate, Mr. Ajay Kumar Gandhi, an Assistant Professor of Chemistry from Government College of Arts and Science, Aurangabad, who will give a presentation on the QSAR evaluation of amylase inhibitors for the anti-hyperglycemic led development. Sir, the stage is yours.
Hello, good afternoon all. Let me share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, your screen is visible. Yes, sir.
Yes, and am I audible properly? Am I enough audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Just a minute. Now my screen shared, PPT?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. Today here I'm going to present my paper on QSAR evaluation of amylase inhibitors for the anti-hyperglycemic lead development. Diabetes which is characterized by hyperglycemia, and type 2 diabetes, which is the most common type of diabetes and most heart-wrenching burden it is having on the society. People with diabetes now reported with the 463 million cases to date, and by 2030 that will rise to 578 millions. There are very severe diabetic complications like cardiovascular discomfort, retinopathy, nephropathy that add extra stress on individual also and the nation as a whole also. Physiology of diabetes we know as that it involves the disruption of this glycolysis cycle, which is actually a multi-step and multi-enzyme catalyzed process, like aldose reductase, sodium glucose transporters are there. Some amylases are involved there. Beta glucuronidase, like enzymes are various different enzymes are play crucial role in the glycolysis cycle, and that got disturbed somewhere in the diabetes. And in the present research, we have focused on the development of amylase inhibitors as a class of candidates for the anti-diabetic effect or anti-hyperglycemic effect. And here we have used or deployed computer-aided drug designing approach, which is like Swarendra Singh sir also focused and talked about this, that this approach is result-oriented and time cost efficient, which is eco-friendly drug discovery approach, which reduces the time and the cost of any drug development process. In that particularly, we have utilized QSAR, quantitative structure activity relationship chemometric tool, which is actually something that correlates mathematically the molecular features which are actually responsible for any particular bioactivity, that is like deactivating enzyme or activating certain regions in the protein molecules, and bioactivity that we mathematically correlate with the molecular features which are expressed in the number form, like we call it as molecular descriptors. And actually the main purpose of having QSAR evaluations done, the model developed can be used for the predictivity of bioactivity of the molecule before prior its actual laboratory synthesis. And that's the present work of mine in the present paper presented. In the methodology, actually we have taken use of 229 amylase inhibitors, which are having very varied range of their bioactivity, which range from somewhere 0.18 to 213 micromolar. And all the free and open source softwares are used in the present study. ChemSketch 12 freeware used for the drawing 2D structures, OpenBabel for conversion of 2D structures into 3D, Tinker in its default settings with the MMFF94 force field has been used for the optimization of all the molecules, 229 molecules, and then these molecules were subjected for the molecular descriptor calculation. And here we have used two softwares, PyDescriptor, and this PyDescriptor, I'm very happy to inform that one of the researchers who contributed for this paper as a co-author, Dr. Vijay Masant, only developed this PyDescriptor, which is used as a PyMol plugin and provide more than 15,000 molecular descriptors, and presently now 45 molecular descriptors that a descriptor can calculate. And another molecular descriptor calculator that we have used is PADL, which is very well known and giving unique molecular features information with the PADL. Can give. The PyDescriptor and PADL togetherly can furnish more than 80,000 molecular descriptors, which consist of 0 dimensional to 3 dimensional. Sorry. Okay, then as a very large number of molecular descriptors being calculated, data pruning, that is reducing data set to some more significant molecular descriptors, we have performed a data pruning operation also, where more than 95% constant values and collinearity with the more than 0.59 or 95% were removed off, and we left with only 1145 molecular descriptors which are having certain significant in deciding amylase inhibitor ability. These are certain molecules which have given for understanding purpose. The first series comprised of the list molecule from the series. We can see the structure. They are very varied. They have same scaffold, but their substitution pattern is very varied. And in the second series, we have given the most active compounds from the 229 molecules data set. And here also we can see the scaffold is also very much varied, and we have different substitution pattern also. So truly we can see in the present data set for the development of QSAR model, we have used a large chemical spaced covering data set. So we are very sure that whatever the QSAR model developed is going to be very beneficial for that will have a wider applicability when it comes to the optimization of presently available some amylase inhibitors towards better potency against enzyme. Then we have performed subjective feature selection and QSAR model development, and for that we have used a blended approach. We have used genetic algorithm and multilinear regression methodology for the variable selection, and those 445 molecular descriptors were subjected for this particular multilinear regression technique, and that regression has furnished a molecular descriptor. Here actually we have used QSARIN's version 2.2.4 software for the QSAR model development, and random splitting has been used where training set and prediction set with the 80-20 pattern we have used. That means we have splitted 229 molecules in the training set and prediction set, and 80% molecules were actually used for the development of the model, and remaining 20 are used which were never shown to the algorithm for the model development, actually used for the external validation, that we call it as prediction set or test set. Then Q square LOO, that is Q square in Leuvenhout fitness criteria was set in QSAR's software. And then at the end, we have got 3 variable based QSAR model. We subjected to this LOO, LMO internal validation methodologies. The external validation also was performed for the model. We have performed voice scrambling and model applicability domain analysis also to legitimate the validation. In the resultant discussion, this is what the model we have obtained. There are 3 molecular descriptors which, as per this model, are the most governing molecular features that governs the amylase inhibition activity. We can see these are the negative, first and third is having negative coefficient. That means those molecular descriptors deteriorate, having more value will deteriorate the amylase inhibition activity of the particular. So this model suggests that to have minimum possible values for these molecular descriptors, or even we can remove of them completely. And the middle one is having molecular descriptor having coefficient positive. So having in the more number, that molecular feature will enhance the amylase inhibition activity. Here in the table we have given statistical performance. I have given the first this fitting criteria, the molecular data set very well fitted to the QSAR evaluation. These are the statistical parameters, and they are very well above the approved threshold values by scientific community or OECD guidelines. The QSAR internal validation also was very well performed in both the QSAR-LU and QSAR-LMO. We have very much high statistical performance, and in external performance, they have much more better performance on their external validation also. These are some graphs. Here we have plotted experimental endpoints, which are actually endpoints, against the predicted by model, and we can see those predicted and experimentally validated molecules lie along the lines. There is very less leverage from the best fitting line. So this graph suggests that most of the molecules are not differing much from their actual values when the prediction also. That's the robustness that prove the robustness of the model. Here we have done some applicability domain. We can see most of the molecules, or very high number of molecules, fall within the applicability domain, and truly this QSAR model having very wide applicability when it comes to the optimization application of this QSAR model for the optimization purpose. Here these numbers those we have marked here, these are molecule numbers, and those molecule numbers little bit shown wrong predictability, and we tried let me tell you one thing here, that we tried to remove these molecules from the QSAR model development, but as the model performance reduced to some extent, we have retained them, but we find it okay that to give some structural information on that these molecules are worse predicted, and whenever you are applying this QSAR model, you can simply check your structure for these kind of functionalities, and if you find we are just mentioning that less reliable prediction you may end up in having. And we have given some best predicted molecules also, actually very high number of molecules predicted best for their activity with the model, but I just have given 2 molecules here which is having very 644 and the 642, almost same predictivity that model could predict the bioactivity for these molecules. Here also, like 3 decimal place till 3 decimal place, we have the accuracy in the prediction. There are certain other reasons which I have explained in the paper which I submitted to the conference. So there one can see what actually we can do with the worst predicted and what the reason behind that. Here I've tried to give some few examples which we can take to understand what that molecular descriptor trying to say. Ring N underscore H5 stands for the number of ring nitrogen atoms which are within this particular range of the electronic charge. This we can call it as a deleterious electronic charge range, which is actually noxious for the activity amylase, anti-amylase or amylase inhibition activity, and those are as having negative coefficient. So whenever we are optimizing molecules, we can do one thing: we can try to have such a nitrogen atoms, we can substitute them accordingly so that they will not fall in this deleterious or noxious range of electronic charge, which is less than -0.3 and greater than 0.3. It should not fall within that range, that otherwise will deteriorate the activity or bioactivity or inhibition activity of that particular amylase inhibitor. The another molecular descriptor is the this which is having positive coefficient, which is the sum of partial charges on acceptor atoms, that is hydrogen bond acceptor atoms within 7 angstrom from the carbon atoms. Here I have given one example each, but there are many other examples with which we can rationalize these two observations, and we can become sure that yes, these are the molecular descriptors having significant effect on altering or deciding the bioactivity of those amylase inhibitors. Here as we go from molecule 108 and 81, here the number of this molecular descriptor changes from 2 to 1, and you can see there is increase in bioactivity. As PIC50 value increases, bioactivity increases. Here actually we have chosen this example to show the synchronous effect of these two molecular descriptors. Here increase in molecular value of this second molecular descriptor also must have added to this increase in the bioactivity. Here I have tried to explain the single molecular descriptor as its value increases from this minus 2.065 to minus, that means just magnitude you just consider and then the sign, then you will understand it's actually the increase in the value of this molecular descriptor, and we have increase in the bioactivity of those molecules also. So that's the thing. In the conclusion, we can say this QSAR evaluation could reveal various information, and whatever the results we have obtained therefrom and conclusions can better reflect the conclusions here. Here we have in conclusion can say that we have developed very robust model which is reflected from these values by statistical parameter, statistical robustness it is. And here in the descriptive robustness we can see that nitrogen atoms not further substituted with the strong electron withdrawing and donating. Mild electron donor and withdrawer are good there, but the strong electron withdrawer and donating effect should not be there. In the conclusion we can say that this is very easy to incorporate. Just change the substituent from fluorine to chlorine, chlorine to bromine can suffice the task. So that's very easy to incorporate. By mere observation we can optimize molecules for the better and amylase inhibition activity. Then this sp2 hybridized the third molecular descriptor which is having negative, that also in a carbon in amide and sulfonamide can be substitute wisely, so we can we can just escape this deleterious range of electronic charge, and this is also very easy to incorporate molecular descriptors. So whatever the three parameters we have, the QSAR model suggests to have in a QSAR model, those are very easy to incorporate. And that's the beauty of this model also, that we can easily optimize molecules for their better anti-inhibition activity. And we may using this molecular QSAR evaluation, we may lead to have a better candidate for anti-diabetic activity, anti-hyperglycemic activity, and better adiamide profiling also one can achieve, as we are going to synthesize or we are going to predict more number of molecules. So this is in the conclusion. In the acknowledgement, I would like to thank Dr. Pola Grammatica from Italy for providing her nice software and very handy and useful software. And I'm also thankful to developers of this Tinker and ChemSketch 12 freeware providers and provider of PyDescriptor and Pardil also for their free versions. And I'm also I find it better to mention that whatever the image in the watermark you can see, it's alpha amylase, and that's I have taken from Wikipedia. I would like to answer some of your questions, some queries. I will be happy to answer, and thank you for your patient listening. Thank you. May I end my presentation, madam?
Okay, Dr. Rajay, I have some queries.
Yes.
Have you synthesized some of these molecules?
Sure.
No, sir. But we are now about to synthesize some of the molecules. We have proposed some molecules.
So this is just a theoretical work.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have just proposed a QSAR model, and we are applied, but bioactivity testing and synthesis and bioactivity testing is yet to done. But our next future plan is that only. And earlier we have used 5 papers. We have used this model only, and we have synthesis, and we successfully could predict the activity also, sir.
Okay, because this is just a theoretical model prediction. So
Yes.
Stability is also very important. Once you are going to just say that this molecule have such activity, but in practice you will able to synthesize or not, it is a very important factor for that.
Yes, sir. I understand, sir, that we must practically synthesize some of the molecules. But here I would like to tell one thing, sir. Actually, 229 molecules we have shortlisted for the model development. But of that, only 80% molecules were actually used for the model development, and remaining 20% molecules were never shown for the this algorithm for the predictivity, but they are just used for the external prediction. So we can take those 20% molecule as good as future molecules, because they were never shown to the algorithm for the model development, and whatever the molecular features they have in them, and that was not by our mind we have selected. That's the random splitting operation that QSAR software provides, and we have not biased for the molecular data set selection in training set and prediction set. So in my opinion, or what I learned in the QSAR, this is also by OECD principle acceptable, that we keep some molecules aside and use them for the external validation purpose. So that will be as good as synthesizing new molecules, because the very purpose of QSAR evaluation or computer aided is to avoid unnecessary use of chemical and laboratory and chemical pollution also to some extent we can reduce, and cost also.
It's good. Theoretical prediction is very good, but in actual
Yes.
practice, whenever you are going to synthesize in a laboratory, you must have to consider that this molecule will be stable or not in the normal temperature and pressure. Okay. Otherwise, it will be difficult to develop a drug by synthesizing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understood, sir.
And another thing I would like to add, because you are going to do such a nice work,
Yes.
that some of the molecule have some other stereochemistry also related with the structure. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You must consider the other possible structures, because there are some cis-trans isomerism may appear in the molecule, and one will active and another will not be active. Okay, so please add this one. So nice presentation. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And sir, we are happy to inform that we have presented 2 papers on COVID also. There also we got very excellent result.
Okay.
And those are listed in WHO's list also for global literature on COVID.
Okay, sure.
So we are happy for. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your suggestion. I will definitely work on those and will come up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ajay. That was quite informative and thorough. We would now like to invite Ajit Kumar Sethi, an Assistant Professor of Commerce from Vikram Dev Autonomous College, Odisha, who will present a paper on sustainability development after COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Ajit Kumar Sethi, are you here with us?
Hello.
Okay, he is. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, I'm audible?
Yes, sir,
Hello.
you are.
Okay, thank you so much, madam. Sorry. Today my topics, sustainable developments after COVID. So my topic on the basis of sustainable development on MSME sector, the entrepreneurs have deeply affected by the economical crisis, and it will run to make platform for the sustainable development. And the study on the MSME sustainability and rules of sustainable development.
Ajit, sir, please share your screen. Your slide is not visible.
Sir?
Please
no
share
slide. Hello, sir. Hello.
Yeah, you are audible. Please.
Sir, there are no slides, sir.
Okay, so you want to present just already. Okay. Okay, you
Okay,
can.
sir. Thank you. Okay, sir. The concept of sustainable development described in the 1987 and Brundtland Commission's report, and sustainable development only the sector of a MSME sector. So there are the 4 dimensions of sustainable development, like society, environment, and cultures and economic. And the sustainability means this the balance between the economic growth and the environmental protections and social equity. But now presently we face this very great economical crisis, pandemic, COVID-19. So this sustainable development affect the economical conditions, and middle income groups will be additionally suffer from their lack of international fundings available for the achieving the 17 sustainable development goals, and also affect the climate changes and mitigations and adaptations. So the sustainability is to revive as a developmental objective, and then low and middle income group will need to come up with policies that are affordable and achieve multiple SDG simultaneously, sustainable development goals simultaneously. So in India can stimulate greater progress towards achieving SDG through the cost-effective and different innovative policy mechanisms. And the uncertainty imposed by COVID-19 pandemic has undetermined the resilience of country, which could affect their willingness to work together for common social objectives. So this sustainable development need to fully adapt the green revolutions that leading us on a path of sustainable development. And the environmental sustainability revolves around making the environmental and friendly decisions for the taking relevant actions and protect the natures. So at present, it is an important issue as people are realizing the full impact of business and people can have on the environmental nature. The sustainable development process will lead to business becoming sustainable in the future and helping in saving our planet with better economy, eco-friendly technology. We know our economy depend upon the small and medium entrepreneurships, MSME sector, and recent year the concerns of sustainability has taken central stage of development globally, and government of India has made several commitments at a national and international platform to save our environment with help of a various initiatives. One such measures like Make in India with zero effect and zero effect initiatives, Atmanirbhar Bharat, of the different policy implemented by the government of India, and express the zeal to balance economic growth with sustainability and social inclusion, as well as the encourage the MSME sectors, and that constantly upgrade their quality standard in product and process without damaging the environment. This is the main aim of this policy. So all the sectors of the economic, like agriculture sector, manufacturing sector, and service sector, will need to contribute. This is the collective objective of the nation building with the sustainability. So to help such MSME sector to adopt new and green technology, the government has been advocating numerous schemes like different policy, and that helps this business to adopt and upgrade their business without damaging the environment. So, MSME, micro, small and medium entrepreneurship, eco-conscious and eco-friendly, not only help in saving the environment, but also assist the business to make the consumer interest in the markets. So as more and more people are now moving towards green and organic product, presently we have since built of awareness regarding the buying and buying of various goods and services that leads to makes for green and eco-friendly product and services. So sustainable of gradation give a boom to the business as well as that tends to have a lot of growth potential because people have becoming aware of the needs of sustainable development and nature friendly goods. And various factors are there for MSME. There's a small, medium, and entrepreneurship in India are largely unorganized, and most of the transactions are not recorded properly. So that in the books of accounts, hence difficult to assess the business performance and facing the crunch of capitals. The productions of volume of MSME sectors in business, this remains very low in cost of very low in cost and so therefore the cost of transactions remain high. MSME sectors even remain the very low cost of production, so the cost of transactions high, and most of the bank and financial institutions perceive the MSME as risk clients due to the absence of a high credit score and in absence of adequate awareness and knowledge about handling the digital banking and transactions activity, SME are found more and vulnerable for cybercrime. So how to manage the crisis, liquidity crisis during the pandemic? During the pandemics, COVID-19, the financial status and the security of MSME are facing more crisis. So the government offered various long-term soft loan and they provide the increase the credit limit to MSME sector. So for survive for long term and to continue during the COVID, during the pandemic time, during the economical crisis. So MSME need to modify the strategies for survive and its overall value of the propositions through the improving the quality of product and strengthen the distribution channel and using the innovative promotions methods. So finally, conclusion, the pandemic, these pandemic situations face more risk without the means of observe the economic shock and mitigation the health of crisis. And we all are carrying out our family and sustainable livelihood and leading efforts to light the pandemic and amidst the threat of third waves. So MSME ensure to equitable and sustainable post-COVID-19 recovery and aim to drive the achievement the sustainable development goals and support to stimulate innovations and creativity and decent work. Sustainability is broadly used for initiative and actions to protect our nations, our environment, and humans, beings, and ecological health, while deriving innovations and not compromising of our way of life. And it contains mostly three important aspects. The proper relations between the three P, like the people, planet, and profit, triple bottom line. And the triple bottom line is to put environmental and social responsibility on even the footing with the economic impact. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It has been correctly put that sustainable development is a joint effort. One person can try bringing a change, but we need everyone together to make it happen. So thank you, Mr. Ajit. That was a much needed wake-up call you presented to us. We would now like to invite Ajungla Jamil, a research scholar from Nagaland University, who will give a presentation on initiation of optimal hyperglycemia In zebrafish, Daniel Rerio using diabetogenic agents.
Okay, is my slide visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, dear organizer, delegates, and their friends. I'm Ajungla Jamir, research scholar from the Department of Zoology, Nagaland University, and I'll be presenting on initiation of optimal hyperglycemia in zebrafish using diabetogenic agents. Diabetes mellitus is a metabolic disease characterized by elevated blood glucose level caused by reduced insulin secretion, insulin resistance, or both. Diabetes mellitus is also the world's fastest growing non-communicable disease and the 9th leading cause of death. The world prevalence of DM among adults is 6.4%, affecting around 382 million adults, and it is expected to increase to 7.7%, that is affecting 590 million adults by 2035. According to the World Health Organization, India is known as the diabetic capital of the world with 31.7 million cases of diabetes recorded in the year 2000, and it is expected to rise to 79.4 million people by 2030. Whom to call diabetic as recommended by ADA and WHO, a person with fasting plasma glucose greater than or equal to 126 milligram per deciliter, or symptoms of diabetes plus casual plasma glucose greater or equal to 200 milligram per deciliter, or 2 hours postprandial glucose greater or equal to 200 milligram per deciliter, or glycated hemoglobin that is greater or equal to 6.5%. Okay, we are using zebrafish as a model because they share physiological, morphological, and histological similarities with mammal. They are of low cost, they have a short life cycle, they have a complete genome, they use less amount of test compound, and they give high output. They also absorb bioactive molecules from water. They have the ability to regulate their internal water and total solute concentration. Therefore, they make a good model for targeting drugs similar to humans. Materials and methods. Chemicals were bought from Sigma Aldrich, and acclimatization of the zebrafish was done in the lab, as you can see in the picture. Adult zebrafish were fed 3 times a day, and only the fish that were healthy were used for this experiment. Induction of hyperglycemia was done in 3 ways. The first was by using alloxan monohydrate. Here, the test animals were exposed to different concentration of alloxan monohydrate for 30 minutes, and then they were exposed to 1% glucose for another 30 minutes and were placed in normal water for 1 hour. They were anesthetized and then removed from the water, and blood glucose was measured using glucometer. Glucose-induced DM. Here, the test animals were treated with 1%, 2%, and 3% glucose solution for 21 days, and then they were placed in normal water for 60 minutes. They were anesthetized, and then blood glucose was measured using glucometer. And the third procedure was streptozocin-induced DM, where the animals were anesthetized, body mass was measured, and STZ was injected 0.35 milligram per gram of their body weight. They were transferred back to the recovery tank, and they were anesthetized again for the measurement of the blood glucose level using glucometer. Results. Alloxan monohydrate induced DM. We observed that after the exposure to 100 and 200 milligram of alloxan monohydrate, that is group 2 and 3, they were not capable to induce DM, whereas animals which were exposed to 300 and 400 milligram of alloxan monohydrate were able to induce diabetes in zebrafish. We kept the normal range of blood glucose as 75 to 90 milligram per deciliter, and we kept a diabetic benchmark that is 200 milligram per deciliter. Therefore, all the animals that showed their blood glucose level 200 milligram and above were taken as diabetic. In order to maintain the diabetic for a longer period of time, the zebrafish, after exposure to 300 milligram of alloxan monohydrate for 30 minutes, they were then immersed to 1% glucose for 30, 60, 120, and 180 minutes in group A, that is glucose test variable. And in group B, what we did was that we exposed the animals to normal water for 30, 60, 120, and 180 minutes after exposure to 300 milligram of alloxan monohydrate for 30 minutes. And we observed that the zebrafish metabolized the elevated blood glucose level in this group B, that is water test variable, whereas the subjects exhibited diabetic in glucose test variable for a longer period of time. This is the glucose-induced DM result, where after the exposure to different grades of glucose, that is 1%, 2%, and 3%, we observed that the animal took 21 days for becoming diabetic when exposed to 1% glucose, whereas the animal which were treated with 2% and 3% glucose showed diabetic just after 7 and 4 days respectively. For the streptozocin-induced DM, blood glucose level was measured on the 1st, 7th, 14th, and the 21st day. And in order to maintain the diabetic for a longer period of time, booster dose was provided in day 1, 3, 5 in week 1, day 11 in week 2, and day 16 in week 3. Therefore, the model was found to be suitable for diabetic if proper dose was provided. Discussion. Zebrafish exposed to diabetogenic agents such as alloxan monohydrate, streptozocin, and glucose water solution induced diabetes mellitus, and if left untreated, then we observed that the subject metabolized the elevated glucose level and showed high degree of glucose homeostasis. Exposure to 100 and 200 milligram of alloxan monohydrate for 30 minutes were not capable to induce diabetes, whereas 300 and 400 milligram of alloxan monohydrate gave positive response. Mortality was also recorded with 400 milligram of alloxan monohydrate. Hence, 300 milligram of alloxan monohydrate was found to be suitable to induce diabetes in the subject. Furthermore, when the subject were placed in 1% glucose for 30 minutes and above after the exposure to alloxan monohydrate, diabetic was retained for a longer period. When the subject were kept in different concentration of glucose, that is 1%, 2%, 3%, hyperglycemia was achieved after 21 days, 7 days, and 4 days respectively. And STZ exposed with a booster dose was found to maintain diabetic in the subject for 21 days without any mortality. In the conclusion, our data demonstrated that the exposure of zebrafish to glucose water for a prolonged period promoted persistently high level of blood glucose level, but glucose withdrawal reversed the pathology, probably by the recovery of the insulin response. Zebrafish can be an ideal model for studying the different mechanisms affected by hyperglycemia and for understanding the complications of the secondary ones. Overall, these findings suggest that zebrafish can be induced to develop mild and stable hyperglycemia, and this model is ideal for studies requiring a short-term or mild model. Acknowledgement. I want to thank my supervisor and my fellow lab mates, and these are the references that I took, and thank you so much for your patient listening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jameel. Considering that India is called the diabetic country, that was a really informative paper and a great initiative that you have taken up. We would now like to invite Ms. Akansha Gupta, a research scholar from DAVV Indore, who will give a presentation on effectiveness of developed web-based instructional material in terms of self-perception in understanding the self for B.Ed students.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay, now I'm going to share my screen. Okay, is it visible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am, you are visible and audible also.
Okay, thank you, sir. So my presentation today, I'm going to present a paper, and my research topic is effectiveness of developed web-based instructional material in terms of self-perception in understanding the self for B.Ed students. So it was an experimental research in which the independent variable that I have taken was method of teaching, which is taken in the form of web-based instructional material. And the dependent variable that I have taken was self-perception. And the sample that I have taken from the population was the B.Ed students. So the operational definitions of my variable: first, Khan defines web-based instructions as a hypermedia-based instructional program which utilizes the attributes and resources of World Wide Web to create a meaningful learning environment where learning is fostered and supported. And the another variable, that is self-perception. It can be defined as self-perception refers to the self-regard and self-acceptance of an individual. Self-regard measures the affirmation of self because of worth and strength, or self-acceptance measures acceptance of self in spite of weaknesses or deficiencies. The objective that I have framed for my research work was to compare the mean self-perception scores of students at pre and post-test stages of group taught through web-based instructional material. And the hypothesis, the null hypothesis, was framed by the researcher, that was, there is no significant difference in the mean self-perception scores of students at pre and post-test stages of group taught through developed web-based instructional material. The research was delimited to the content of web-based instructional material was prepared in understanding the self of B.Ed syllabus of colleges affiliated to Devi Ahilya University, Indore only. And the another delimitation was the study was limited to B.Ed fourth semester of session 2018 to 20 students of DAVB affiliated colleges only. And the review that has been done by the researcher, initially Beta John Avery in 2004, Lee 2005, Unal 2005, back in 2010, compared the web-based and face-to-face method, and they found that web-based method is less effective than the face-to-face method. And after that, from the related study of Manikam and Devanathan in 2011, Sensory in 2011, Jaya Shanmugaraja in 2011, Karthikeyan and Jayaraman in 2011, Ponnalagu in 2011, Chen John 2007, and Zakaris in 2010. They found that web-based instructions were effective in terms of achievement of students in different subjects. So by these reviews, the researcher has found a gap here that was rational was due to the lack of consistency in finding. Researcher has decided to work in this area. And the another reason for taking this area was from the related literature. It was found that web-based instructions has been prepared for many subjects. Like Shanmugaraja developed e-content in zoology, Manikam and Devanathan for biology, Karthikeyan and Jayaraman developed for Tamil teaching, Ponnalagu and Jharia developed e-content for mathematics, Cobb and Suzanne for nursing courses, Core Design for biology, and Sekar developed for psychology. So the researcher decided to develop the web-based instruction in understanding the self, which is a course of B.Ed students. The methodology that was used by the researcher consists of sample, tool, design, and procedure. So the sample consisted of 47 B.Ed trainees. Sample was selected randomly for the treatment. It represented both the genders. And the tool that has been taken by the researcher was self-perception measuring scale. The self-perception of the student was assessed with the help of self-perception measuring scale, which was developed by Dr. K.G. Agarwal. And the scale consisted of 40 items that is based on two areas, that is self-regard and self-acceptance. The full scale with the items combined from both the areas make form of self-perception. Test-retest reliability of the scale was 0.75 and 0.80 for self-regard and self-acceptance respectively. The research design that has been taken by the researcher, it was a single group pre-test post-test design. The layout of the design is given here, in which the pre-test, which was followed by self-perception measuring scale. Then after that, the treatment has been provided to the sample, and the web-based instructional material was provided via cloud-based platform for 1 month. And after that, the post-test followed by the same self-perception measuring scale. The statistical analysis and interpretation. So as the objective was to compare the mean self-perception scores of students at pre and post-test stages of group taught through developed web-based instructional material. So as the random sampling was used, more than 30 students was in sample and data were on interval scale. So the researcher has decided to analyze the data with the help of parametric test. So before using the parametric test, researcher has taken the assumption for parametric test. So the first assumption was tested by the researcher, which was test of normality, which showed the value 0.073. So this value was not significant. Hence, the assumption of normality holds good. It means the distribution was normal. So the next assumption, which was done by homogeneity of variance, and that is tested by the Pittman-Morgan test. So again, the value you can see in the table, that is 6.617. So the table shows the value of correlation coefficient is 0.075, whose significant value is 0.617, which is not significant at 0.05 level of significance. Hence, the results of Pittman-Morgan test are not significant. So it can be concluded that variances are equal. The assumption of homogeneity of variance was fulfilled. As the assumption of parametric tests are satisfied, so the data were analyzed with the help of paired sample t-test. So the researcher has decided to analyze the data by paired sample t-test. So this will be the summary of paired sample t-test. You can see the significance value, that is 0.003. So from the table, the t value is 3.089, whose two-tailed significant value with degree of freedom 46 is 0.003, which is significant at 0.01 level of significance. Therefore, the null hypothesis, that is, there is no significant difference in the mean self-perception scores of students at pre and post-test stages of growth taught through developed web-based instructional material, is rejected at 0.01 level of significance. Further, the mean scores of post self-perceptions are higher than the pre-scores of self-perception when the students were taught through web-based instructional material. Therefore, it can be concluded that the developed material on understanding the self was effective. So, findings from the study, it was found that developed web-based instructional material on understanding the self was effective in terms of self-perception for teaching the BA trainees. So the conclusions, the result of the present study concludes that web-based instructional material can be a better option of teaching in the present scenario. The role of teacher in web-based instructional material will be acquiring, processing, analyzing, integrating the content, and then designing it according to the need of the learner. This technology offers so many benefits for the learners and instructors. It is a flexible approach which provides freedom to the student to learn anywhere at any time. Present study has a wide implications for the persons working in the field of education. It provides guidelines to the curriculum designer, teacher educators, principals, teachers, students, parents, and researchers also. So we can simply say that web-based instructions are environmental friendly also, as it reduces the negative environmental impacts that are caused due to manufacturing and transportation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Akansha. That was a wonderful presentation. I would now like to inform all the participants that from some of our judges in the panel, we have received information that if now the participants or delegates are going to exceed their time limit, they will get negative marking. So kindly keep it in mind that you don't exceed the time limit, which is 7 minutes. Okay? Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Mr. Akash Chhetri from Arunachal University of Studies, who will present a paper on a preliminary study on the coleopterans of Namsai district, Arunachal Pradesh.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you for the introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, just give me a moment. Is my screen visible, ma'am?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Respected faculty members, research scholars, and organizers, as well as the audience. So, I'm Akash Chhetri from Arunachal University of Studies. I'm going to present a paper on a preliminary study on the coleopterans of Namsai district, Arunachal Pradesh. So, as you know, Arunachal Pradesh, it has been said as the global biodiversity hotspot, one of the global biodiversity hotspot of the world, and it houses a variety of flora and fauna. So in insects in general, they consist of um, largest number of species diversity, and in the insect class, the highest diversity is held by the Coleopteran order. Okay. So Coleoptera, they are very important from economic point of view because they are the workers of the forest. They are the insects that are responsible for destruction of crops, and they are also responsible for restoring the forest by processing dungs and by helping the nature to break down matter faster. Okay. So the study area, it is Namsai district of Arunachal Pradesh. So it is located in the northeast part of the India, as you can see in the map. During the study, we have visited agricultural lands, we have visited swamps, dense vegetations, as well as some human settlements of the district. Okay. So for the methodology, the study was done in the early monsoon season, that is from June to July in the year 2021. So we actually went to some bushes, some mud puddles, and we have visually searched for the coleopterans. Other methods include light traps during night times, as well as pitfall traps, which we use to collect the dwelling coleopterans. Also, the study time, actually we tried to differ it. We tried to collect the insects in different time intervals, that is morning, afternoon, evening, and night, so that we can register maximum number of species. For photography, I've used the Poco X3 mobile camera, as well as sometimes the Canon D1300 DSLR. And for identification, using available literature in the internet as well as in books, we have identified in the zoology lab of Arunachal University studies. Okay, so here are my observations. As you can see, we have encountered from 9 families. We have encountered beetles from 9 families. That includes Belastomidae, that is the giant water bugs; Carabidae, that are the ground beetles; Cerambicidae, that are the longhorn beetles. Next, we have the Chrysomelidae. So okay, here you can see the Chrysomelidae. Those are the leaf beetles. Okay, moving on. Next, we have the Sarculionidae, that are the true weevils on the first picture. High. Okay, next we have the Disticidae, that are the predaceous diving beetles. Next we have Lycidae, the net-winged beetles. After that we have the Pyrocoridae, that are the fire-colored beetles. Then we have the Scarabidae, that are the dung beetles. Okay, so these are my observations. So next results. So during the study of 2 months, we encountered 21 species belonging to 9 families. Out of this, the largest family was of leaf beetles, that is the Chrysomelidae, and the second largest family is the Scarabidae, that are the dung beetles. So a total of 22 genus we found, and a total of 19 genus we have found during the study. Okay, next, discussion and conclusion. Similar studies have been done in the area where they identified 70 coleopteran species from Kane Wildlife Sanctuary in the year 2010, which is significantly higher than our study. Most of the study done in Arunachal Pradesh regarding coleopterans is done by JSI, which is done in a large area, and we cannot actually compare it with this small scale study. So I got only one small scale study, that is of 2010. That is why I'm referring here. So actually, it will be a stretch to call this a through study, because only one season was covered during the study period, and therefore it needs more work, and eventually more species will be added upon further research. Okay, these are my references. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akash. The study seems in tune with the conservation of environment and saving one group at a time. Now I would like to invite Ms. Anita, a research scholar from Baba Mastnath University, Haryana, who will give a presentation on parental upbringing to reduce the effect of COVID-19.
Good afternoon to all respected speakers. Myself, Anita. I'm going to present my topic. Just a minute, ma'am. Yes. Are you visible my screen, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am, it's starting. Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
My research title is Parental Upbringing to Reduce the Impact of COVID-19. Parenting has been described as the style of child upbringing in relation to a privilege or responsibility of both mother and father, together or independently, to prepare a child for the society and culture, where the child uses his parents as models for making his social adjustment. Parents at this stage are supposed to play a key role in perpetuating for them a more congenial, happy, lucid, and warm atmosphere, along with careful nurturing for their children. And the relationship between parents and child happens to be a central factor in the social upliftment of the individual. COVID-19, coronavirus disease 2019 is a contagious disease caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. The first known case was identified in Wuhan, China in December 2019. The disease has since spread worldwide, leading to an ongoing pandemic. According to WHO 2020, people may have to suffer negative consequences in the long run due to this condition. Now, impact of COVID-19 on parenting. The survival of the parents was severely affected due to the pandemic, which almost changed their lives. Not only the parents, but also the children had to face many consequences. People's physical and mental health staggered. Some parents saved their lives from getting disturbed due to this its effect, and did not feel any lack in the bringing of their children. Most of the parents were those who could not overcome these crises on their own and had to face physical and mental trauma. They lost their family members forever. Families whose economic condition was not good had to face hunger and unemployment, which affected their way of upbringing. Children's schools and many child care institutions were closed, due to which the responsibility of parents towards children increased. Parents could not support children properly due to social distancing. Impact of COVID-19 on parenting. This pandemic affected on parents and child's adjustment. Due to this, we had to face financial disturbance, and many schools and child care centers were closed because of this. Parents are stressed during COVID-19. This graph shows parents' stress level before and during COVID-19. Effective parental upbringing to reduce the impact of COVID-19, like helping children with online classes and school work, dealing with children's fear and stress, keeping healthy routine, managing behavior problems, monitoring your child's social media uses, and parenting of teens with like cooking and eating together, gardening together, playing sports and exercise together, and talking about COVID-19 that explain them why social distancing and other rules are important. How education can emerge stronger than before COVID-19. COVID-19 has allowed for greater appreciation for the importance of public schools. Families are realizing the essential caretaking role school plays and how teachers bolster school well-being on a daily basis. COVID-19 is highlighting the central role of education in the economic, social, and political stability of the general population. Strong and inclusive public education system are essential to the short and long-term recovery of society. It is extremely vital that society does not allow education to dip and fail because of the switch to remote learning. Effective parental upbringing to reduce the impact of COVID-19, like address children's fear, answer questions about the pandemic simply and honestly, and recognize your child's feelings, keep in touch with loved ones, model how to manage feelings, use positive discipline like redirect bad behavior, creative play, direct your attention, use reward and privilege, avoid physical punishment. Research methodology. This research paper is based on secondary data. Information related to this research paper has been obtained through the internet research paper and experts' views. We reviewed 180 research papers, selected 20 of them to know the result of this study. Objective of the study to explain the impact of COVID-19 on parenting and to know the effective parental upbringing to reduce the impact of COVID-19. Now, conclusion. In conclusion, parental upbringing are highlighted to reduce the impact of COVID-19. Efforts can be made to reduce its effect on children only by making change in parenting. This pandemic has affected parents as well as children, and during this, the development of children has become a challenge for the parents. This research study describes parenting affected by COVID-19 and informs parents of how COVID-19 has affected parenting. This study finds that COVID-19 has significantly impacted parental parenting, and its dangerous effect can be mitigated by some strategies. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anita, for laying emphasis on the importance of the role of parents in upbringing of a child, especially in a country like India, where parents hold the hand of their child and send them to school and then stay with them until their child stands on their feet. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Anjali Bohra, a research scholar from Jai Narayan Vyas University, Jodhpur, Rajasthan, who will give a presentation on removal of dyes from organic waste. Ma'am, the stage is yours.
Okay. This is my oral
Ms. Anita
presentation.
Yes.
My name is Anjali Bohra, and I am from Jai Narayan Vyas University, Jodhpur. My topic is removal of dyes from organic waste. Gigifus mauritiana is a spiny evergreen shrub, and the species is believed to have originated in Indo-Malaysian region of Southeast Asia. This plant is quite nutritious and rich in vitamin C. The activated carbon prepared from Gigifus mauritiana is used for removal of dyes from aqueous solution. Activated carbon usually increases the cost of the treatment process. In this study, effect of many variables, pH, adsorbent doses, contact time, and initial dye concentration were investigated. The adsorbent was characterized by technical spectroscopy such as FTIR, XRD, and by the analysis of SEM. It is found that adsorption increased with the increase in amount of adsorbent as well as increase in pH value. Surface properties of the adsorbent have been characterized by SAM EDX FTIR. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anjali. I'm sorry for being away from my seat. That was an amazing presentation on utilization of Ziziphus mauritiana for removal of dyes from aqueous solution.
Yeah.
Now I would like to invite Ms. Anjali Sharma, a research scholar from IIMT University, India, to give her presentation on cloud computing technology. Is an incredible job during COVID-19.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving me a chance to present my research paper. A warm good evening to all respected jury members and my dear friends. Today, my topic for this research paper is cloud computing technology is an incredible job during COVID-19. Just give me 1 minute, ma'am, to show my presentation.
Ma'am, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Ma'am, I've tried
Okay,
to
ma'am.
present my presentation actually. Ma'am, I think some network issue is there.
Oh, is it because of the network issue? You can tell us, otherwise we'll help you out.
Can I present without PPT, ma'am?
Madam, you can show PPT. What's the problem?
Sir, I'm going for showing, but in 3 dots more option, but it is not showing.
Ma'am, open your PPT.
Open, okay, ma'am. Okay, sir.
Then come on to Google Meet window.
Okay, sir. Yes.
There is an arrow on bottom.
There is an arrow on bottom. Arrow where, ma'am? Where, sir?
Click that arrow.
Sir, where arrow?
At bottom bar on Google Meet window.
Google Meet window arrow. Sir, this is showing for meeting details. Show everyone.
Ma'am, it's near the 3 dots.
Okay. Okay, yes.
Click that arrow.
Yes, click on arrow.
Then what comes?
Whiteboard, sir.
Click that arrow.
Yes, sir. Show entire screen. Your entire screen.
Yes, ma'am. Select your entire screen.
But sir, share is inactive, cancel is active.
Yeah, select entire screen, then click share.
Okay.
Please communicate in English language. Communicate in English language, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Select the entire window and then click share.
Sir, when I'm
Kindly communicate in English language. I could not comprehend or grasp the extent of your communication.
Okay.
I'm a Nigerian. Please communicate in English language for proper grasping and extent.
Sir, can it is possible
Please.
I am presenting my paper without PPT?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. A warm good evening to all of my respected jury members and my dear friends. Today, my topic is cloud computing technology is an incredible job during COVID-19. If we are compared from last 22 years when we had only dial-up internet connection, no smartphones, what was the growth of our business? And if we see the era of cloud computing, that is the big difference, which play a vital role in the working of business. It has been amazing to watch the rapid growth of business by the use of cloud computing during COVID-19 crisis. And you can see how it is impacted in our daily routine. Cloud computing is not only good for employees working from home as well as consumers that use this amazing technology. During COVID-19 pandemic, the cloud computing technology has completely changed the way of working style of an organization and business function. Cloud computing provides a good collaboration, communication, and essential services by online by the different ways. When offices were ordered to lock down in March 2020, then we see the significant role of cloud computing technology in taking working from home and doing work efficiently. During the lockdown, cloud computing technology helped to provide remarkable job in the medical domain. It provides an interactive way to detecting, tracking, monitoring newly infected COVID-19 patients, as you can see, Arogya Setu and many more, and also provide better creativity and productivity for healthcare workers. It also provides latest infrastructure for facilitating the digital information, as digital information is improving online efficiency and association services by cloud technology from small to large type of enterprises. So this technology had to minimize virus inspection by providing online services and work from home. So this paper is also studied the remote working of cloud computing for the COVID-19 pandemic, the impact of the cloud technology in organization as result of COVID-19. Here we can introduce three sections in my paper. Section 1, which describe the huge uses of internet in different companies during pandemic with cloud. Second section describe the impact of cloud computing with significance of cloud computing during COVID-19. And third section describe the cloud computing technology framework. If we see the uses of internet, so I show my report. This show the huge amount of internet in different companies they use in this during pandemic. It is vary country to country. According to the internet speed and latency, we can see the use of internet during the lockdown. If we are taking the example video conferencing, if we are taking the example of Zoom, so we can see that it will increase 300 times percentage of users by internet in this time. So this is the help of the work from home. We can see we can take the classes online. We can see the various types of meetings we can through Zoom we have conducted in this period. If we see the impact of cloud computing during COVID-19, due to the global pandemic disease called COVID-19 has impacted to our business relation to develop the new technology. The major challenges and operations the business by IT services during this pandemic. The development and uses of cloud technology is counted as inappreciated solution to the business that time. Cloud computing services impact on business due to COVID-19 pandemic by different ways. Now, if we are talking about the major part of the cloud services computing which help in this time, that will be migrated the cloud services like IaaS, that is infrastructure as a service, and PaaS, that is called the platform as a service, and SaaS, that is called the software as a services. These are the services which provide to the consumer to provide the help in this pandemic era. Cloud computing are used resources like tools, applications, softwares, networks, servers, and data through the internet, and we can use the various facility which they provide. When the electronic machine has access by the internet, and cloud allow the employee to access their data anywhere from any platform, and also the softwares. Cloud computing also allow the organization to guide the decision on data, because we can collect the global data. On that data we can take the decision, so we can see the most effective decision making process. So the employee very clear and collaborated the related operations and the decision making process. That is the main impact of the cloud computing. If we are talking the significance of the computing, they are many, but we are taking some. Number one is the main advantage of the cloud computing is to provide less cost to organization, because they do not require to purchase, maintain, and also construct the infrastructure. The consumer can simply interact with the cloud application by online to complete their task as per pay, as per use. Secondly, the implementation of the cloud computing technology enables the organization to save data storage on the devices and allow the consumers to upgrade software accurately as compared to traditional tangible methods like flash drives, hard drives, disk, compact disks. These technology basically remove all these things. You can see we can store our data on the cloud in our phone, and we can access anytime from there. Thirdly, main Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Flash, CAD/CAM or software that offer online facility in the creativity by cloud via the internet. Therefore, this practice able to consumer for efficient work like download, updated versions, and fix the programs straightforwardly. These are the main. And finally, we can say this is the scalability and the feasibility. Scalability, that means that it is the important advantage of cloud migration, as it provides in this era to business to scale up and scale down as required, storage and flexibility, and also get the good adjustment to various features that gives the more resources without purchasing new hardware and software and its storage spaces. This is the scalability. And if we are talking the flexibility support the business growth and the strategic advantage without any additional cost done by the cloud technology. So this is the hybrid approach of the scalability and the feasibility of the cloud computing. And finally, my research paper conclude that he had no cloud technology. When we had no cloud technology, only had a connection, internet connection, so no smartphone, then this pandemic time is very difficult for our organization and our schools and our and many more. But today we are having cloud computing technology, so these crises we can overcome easily by the help of the this technology. It is been amazing to watch the rapid growth of business during COVID-19 crisis. Cloud computing provided good collaboration, communication, and essential services by online. So we can say it provides an interactive way to detect, tracking, and monitoring newly infected COVID-19 patients, like we can see in Arogya Setu. This is completely on cloud-based technology. Through this cloud technology, we can easily detect and track, monitor our newly infected COVID-19 patient through this facility. So this paper basically maximum uses of internet, which show the different company use the cloud more in that era, and we can save our business, we save our life through cloud computing. This is the significance of this paper. So this cloud computing technology is an incredible job, doing incredible job during the COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for making us realize how this technology helped us get through the COVID-19 phase and made work from home easy. Thank you so much. We would now like to invite Ms. Ankita Aaron, an assistant professor at Rakshpal Bahadur Management Institute, UP, who will give a presentation on green marketing, a critical review on emerging best particles for sustainable development. Ma'am, the stage is yours.
Hello, ma'am, am I
Yes,
audible?
ma'am. Yes.
Ma'am, please
Yes, ma'am,
help
you're
me out
audible.
in sharing this further. I am not able to share.
So, ma'am, just give us a minute. We'll help you out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Tell us, what is the problem, ma'am?
Ma'am, I have shared, but
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
not what I have to do further. I just guide me.
Open your presentation.
Yes, I have opened it up.
First, you open your presentation.
Yes, it's open, sir.
First, yes, ma'am.
Is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am. It is visible.
Okay.
Click on slideshow, yeah, F5 button.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon to all. My name is Ankita Aaron. I'm assistant professor at Rakshpal Bahadur Management Institute, Bareilly. My topic is green marketing, a critical review on emerging best practices for sustainable development. So what is green marketing? Green marketing is a practice of marketing eco-friendly products and services. It is also known as environmental marketing or ecological marketing. It involves various range of activities like product modification, changing product process, packaging, modifying, advertising, etc. Objectives of green marketing is basically adoption and application of sustainable business methods and practices, displaying social responsibility, optimum utilization of resources by reducing expenditure on packaging, transport, and usage of resources like water, electricity, etc. Displaying how safe and watchful products and services are. So basically, green marketing and brand marketing go hand in hand. And for that, we need to communicate through all points of contact to the customers, like website, email, cold calling, TV, blogs, coupons, mobile, banking, and radio. Businesses can also get into partnership with companies having similar business practices and achieve cross promotion at lower cost. Objective of my study is that as consumers are becoming more and more aware of environmental issues and sustainability aspects, consumers are switching to greener products rather than normal products that were either produced without environmental concerns or would pose environmental hazards in near future. So the paper tries to evaluate and understand current potential of green marketing and tries to understand the impact of green marketing in overall consumer behavior to understand various segments that have emerged due to green marketing efforts. So basically, the new segment of consumers that have emerged due to green marketing is in front of you. The naturalities, first of all, I will discuss what are naturalities. Naturalities type of consumers believe in chemical-free products. Their approach is spiritual and aim for healthy lifestyles. Lohas or 19% are 19% of the total segment, and that means lifestyle of healthy and sustainability. They are most concerned segment of the population who are environmentally aware and active. They are early adopters of green market products and influence their families and friends. Then comes the drifters. Drifters are driven by market trends and most attractive segment for the marketers, as they have no specific or preferences for any product. They go with the trend that is in the market. They try that product themselves. Conventionals are the second largest customer segment who are practical and thus prefer green products. Unconcerned is obviously those people who are not concerned with any of the marketing trends or what the environment is facing. The other segmentation on the basis of green interest is resource conservers, who are basically concerned with saving resources. Health fanatics usually prefer to buy and consume only natural organic products. Animal lovers try to safeguard interest of animals and avoid foods that have animal parts. The outdoor enthusiasts prefer green campaigns and go for picnics and try to be more greener in their usual day-to-day life. So companies are also going green. For example, McD has introduced energy efficient consumption. It has reduced wastage by 25%, reduced impact on animal habitat by using thoughtful ways to get animal products. Similarly, Dell has also given some of its proportion to the environment by promoting safe disposal of Dell computers and other gadgets of other brands, and thus reduced e-waste from the globe. Google has also contributed to the green environment by creating data centers that are most energy efficient. It has installed windmills and solar panels. It has decreased or reduced energy usage and is campaigning for energy conservation and renewable resources of energy. Then comes the Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, I have studied its reports, and many companies have adopted green as their basic strategies, while some are converting to their traditional practices to green strategies. But Coca-Cola has gone a step further, and its sustainability report says that it has reduced the carbon footprint by 25% in 2020 as compared to 12% in 2005. It also aims at giving back some percentage to the environment, and thus 1.9% of operating income in 2020 has been given back to environment, while only 1.9% was in 2015. So there is no much change, but water replenishment has been increased, and it was 115% in 2015, which has increased to 170% in 2020. Coca-Cola also aims to improve efficiency of water in manufacturing process by 25%, but it could achieve only 19% in 2020, while 12% in 2015. So it still needs to improve further in water replenishment. Then packaging, Coca-Cola has recycled 90% of its packaging globally in 2020, which was just 85% in 2017. So greenhouse gas emission and waste was also reduced by the company. The conclusion is that green is indispensable part of life and we cannot do without it. Marketers as well as consumers have become mindful of what they are into. Thus, green is a very broad term which comprises of terms like organic, sustainable, reusable, recyclable, or eco-friendly. We as a community fail to conserve our earth and its resources to the fullest and purest form, but it is better now than never. We have already done much harm to the natural resources, animal habitats, and ozone layer. The green practices will negate the after effects of human impact on earth. The companies are actually making genuine efforts towards green marketing, will have competitive edge over companies doing greenwashing, as it is a fake practice which would not be able to fool customers for long. Thus, the best option that companies and customers have is going green. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ankita, for focusing on the importance of green marketing and how it's pivotal to sustainable development. I would now like to invite Ms. Archana Purohit from Government Dungar College to present her paper on gonadoprotective efficacy of Moringa oleifera against radiation and mercury-induced changes in mice. Ms. Archana Purohit, are you here with us?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
एक सेकंड entire screen